If you were associated with digital media in any way in the late 2000s and the 2010s, you know today's guest. Karen Robinovitz was one of the very first people bringing brands and bloggers into the same room. She started by hosting dinners and creating experiences and went on to become an absolutely key voice in helping companies understand that the women building audiences online weren't just hobbyists. They were storytellers with real influence and real value. At the time, these events they were super exciting and a little surreal, but in retrospect, they were the foundation of an entirely new industry. In 2010, about 6 months after I started Ramshackle Glam and met Karen at these events, as well as a number of other bloggers who formed that initial core group, Karen co-founded a company called Digital Brand Architects. It was the first management company dedicated exclusively to online creators. Now, to be clear, I didn't get what she was doing at first. Why would someone like me need a manager? But I very quickly found out and went on to work with Karen for many years. Years that shaped my life and my family's life, well, forever. This was a time when brands didn't want to engage with the internet. It wasn't sexy, they didn't get it. But early on, Karen was able to help massive global brands like Tiffany and Estee Lauder understand the potential of engaging with creators. She was also able to help those creators understand the ins and outs of how to work with brands and make a living out of what they were already doing. And she built a client list that included luminaries like Amy Song, Camila Coelho, and Nicolette Mason. So in this conversation, Karen and I talk about what those early days actually looked like. The trial and error, the skepticism on all sides, and the constant balancing act between staying true to yourself and making the business work. We get into the unglamorous parts too. The pressure to perform, the unspoken hierarchies, and what happens when the thing you help build starts to change. We also talk about why Karen eventually stepped away from that world and how she found her way to building something completely different. Not just a brand, but this whole world rooted in joy, play, and healing, and one of my personal favorite places on earth. It's a behind-the-scenes conversation about ambition, creativity, and evolution with a woman who sat in the front row, quite literally, for it all. I'm Jordan Reid, and this is Like Me. Karen Robinovitz, welcome to Like Me. I am so excited to have you.
What a journey, long journey the two of us have been paralleling.
Been through it. I have so many questions for you, but the first thing that I wanted to say to you was, I'm going to try to not get emotional at all during this interview. I credit you as, and I do this all the time publicly, the person who saw the literal value in digital marketing before anybody else. And I do credit you like full stop with my career.
Thank
really.
you.
And with the careers of many of my colleagues. So how does that land for you?
I actually have a little bit of the chills. Very humbling and very surreal and very it's not, I am not somebody who likes to give herself credit. I'm somebody who always sees what I haven't done, looking at what I have. So I just look at it as at that time, I did recognize literally the equivalent of what I would say is television killed a radio star in the social space. I just thought this will happen. This is the direction of the way the universe will go. And I saw and identified a group of young women that were doing things their own way and thought I could really gather them and make a difference with them and push them all forward, because I realized that my kind of skill set is actually just, I'm really good at making things happen for other people.
Interesting.
And I
Interesting.
really love being behind people and pushing them into where they wanna go and kind of steering them, but I didn't think of, "Oh, let's change a system and create a movement." I just saw, here is a space we could all play in, and I knew the decision makers on the brand side or the media side, and I knew the power of what you were all corralling together with an audience.
I mean, I take me back to 2009, I believe, is when I met you. What I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you were organizing these sort of experiential sort of gifting moments with brands, and you were inviting this smallish group of women who we all got to know each other very well to these events. And they were so fun, by the way. Well done. Um,
We did it well back then.
really well. It was so much fun. But I remember when you came to me and you were like, "So I'm starting this thing and I'd like to manage you." And I was like, "Huh? Why would I need a manager?" And within about like 2 months after that conversation, I was like, "Oh, I need a manager. Oh my god." Like, and it was just so exactly that moment in time. So how did you make the shift from doing these experiential moments to what you did?
So I'm gonna dial it back first and share that my first career when I graduated from college was as a journalist. So in the mid-90s, I came into the New York media landscape and worked at Women's Wear Daily,
Mhm.
and eventually kind of became a staff writer there. And when I left after 3.5 years, I was a freelance journalist, and I used to write for like the New York Times and Harper's Bazaar and Mary Claire and Elle. And so at my core, I'm also a storyteller. I am also somebody who loves almost like finding things and sharing them with other people. And I loved crafting stories. I love crafting them from nothing into something. And along that road, I had written books, I had done television, I had sold the book to Disney, to Universal. Like I had sort of, I think what I was doing was learning the hard way what I could warn others about, because I had my mistakes along the way. And um I think somewhere around the time I turned 30 is when I real came to my realization that like I didn't necessarily want to be the one going on television anymore. I realized that getting behind people was something I really loved, and I also really got into digital marketing, and I got into digital marketing at a time when brands did not really think being online was sexy or cool, and they didn't wanna do it, and I used to say to them that their online store would be their biggest location and have the least amount of overhead. Uh,
Mhm.
they didn't have the same rents, and I used to say that the people who are talking about your product online will have as much or more power than the $5 million ad that you're creating. And at the time, they were all like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, whatever, whatever, whatever."
Totally.
And when I started going to brands to say, when I was supporting their strategies and marketing and say, "Let's invite this community of people who kind of came up and online," and they were all like, and I was like, "I promise." And I remember like convincing Tiffany, which was a really big deal back then. And
My gosh, I
I
remember
did
those
for
campaigns.
breakfast at Tiffany
Huge.
with
Mhm.
the brand and invited, people from the online community, and, they started to, after they let me do it, they saw the value, and when I had like, because I was inviting people and bringing them to brands and saying, like, "Work with her. She's just as amazing in a different way as working with Carolyn Murphy, but it's just different." And the difference is that, like, if I looked at a beauty campaign and I would look at Carolyn Murphy, and I like, as a consumer, I'm never gonna look like Carolyn Murphy. And also Carolyn Murphy doesn't even need any beauty products to look like that. She just looks
Right.
like that. Let's work
Yes.
with people who we could relate to and are just as beautiful. Um, and I remember those brands being like, I don't know. And then they would hand me this agreement, and I would look at this agreement and say, this is an agreement for an advertorial, but if you're going to work with Jordan or fill in the blank with all the others, this is not advertorial. They're their own media company, and they're the casting director, and they're the face, and they're the copywriter, and they're creating the photography and the images, and they're editing those images, and they're publishing them, and they're marketing them. You have to give her some leeway. And if you want to create the sandbox, right, that she has to stay in, like, these are the words we don't use, or these are the things we avoid, create the sandbox. But you got to give her the freedom within the sandbox. Whereas Karen Murphy is just another ad, and it's being positioned as an editorial, but it's not an editorial. It's an advertorial. This is not an advertorial. And I remember having these meetings with Estee Lauder companies and fundamentally changing their legal team and sitting with their legal team and saying that you can't give this person the same agreement. And they couldn't understand it. It actually took them time to come around and change their legal, but they did. And I think they did because the people that I was working with were the beginning of saying no to these agreements. And then as this space built, more and more people would say no, and they would call me back and be like, okay, let's talk about that legal agreement. So for me, it was this oddly very natural shift, because what happened were people like you were coming up to me saying, like, brands are asking me this, how do I respond? And I would say, how do you think you should respond? And then they would tell me, I was like, no, you can't say that.
You said you were like, Jordan. No. I was like, I don't know. They're offering me $250. And you were like, right. No.
Yeah. And
Because
I also
you
started to
understood that
I
in a way that the
understood that,
brands didn't.
and I also understood, if I think about the biggest talent in the world, none of them do it on their own. They all have managers, they all have agents, they all have somebody, they all have a team around them. And I always think, like, stay in the lane of what you're the best at and surround yourself with people who are good at something else. And what I was good at was seeing both points of view and bringing them together. I didn't necessarily want to take a photo of myself and be in the photo. I didn't want to write that anymore. I think my whole career at that point was building me to understand both the perception of and, like, the perspective of what the talent in the digital space wanted, and I really understood fundamentally what they were creating, because it's what I wanted to create when I was 22, but in a different
Mhm.
format. And and because I had turned it into books, and because I had turned it into television, and because I had turned it into selling my book to Disney, and, like, all of those things, I understood a trajectory, and I understood the mistakes you can make if you take the wrong turn, because I had made those mistakes. And because I had worked with all these brands on a marketing side or a PR side, I really was able to have this dialogue and with both parties. And I think that because I would say to the young women, people like you at that time, like, I know you, I understand you, I was you, but I also understand them. And if you trust me, I will bring you the best of what I could bring to you, and I will bring them the best of what I could bring to them, and know that everybody needs to meet in a certain place in order to build this properly. And luckily, you trusted me, people trusted me, the brands trusted me, because they had known me for, a decade or more now of doing something different, that I was able to kind of create that universe in the middle.
You created that sandbox. I really like that metaphor, because I don't know if it's different now, and I wanted to get your opinion on that, but I do recall how amazing it was to have a major brand be like, what do you think our calendar should be this year? And I was like, all right. And came up with a calendar for them. And month one we'll do this, and month two we'll do this. And that is such revolutionary thing to put in the hands of young women with, no marketing experience except for tons of marketing experience. And I wonder, do you think that that's something that has changed?
Think it's just gotten bigger. I mean, it's gotten bigger. It's become the kind of main marketing budget. And there's no program or campaign by any brand that exists in the world without thinking about this leg of of the program. And this leg has if you think about it, legs are the biggest muscles of the body. So this is what it enables it to run. I am now with my own brand on another side of it. And, I don't have Tiffany budgets. I don't have Estee Lauder budgets.
Right.
I can't do the things that I used to bring to my talent that I managed and represented and took care of. And I can't pay people in that way that I would fight for them, but I can
Mhm.
bring them something else because what I have is an experience that they want to bring their children to.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
for people who don't know, will you please tell us about Sloo Moo?
so I,
I've been many times.
uh,
I'm obsessed. My daughter is 11. She's been going since she was 6, I think, and it's her favorite place in the world.
so 6 years ago, I co-founded a world. I call it a world versus just a brand called Sloo Moo. Sloo Moo Institute is they're large scale experiential universes that are all kind of leaning into the power of play, hands-on play with slime. And it's because I left the world that I had been in when we knew each other because I went through a pretty seismic personal tragedy of loss. And I really fell apart. I had lost a back to back of losing my husband, and then I had a massive nervous breakdown when I lost him. And then I lost my cousin in the Parkland school shooting. And, um, I really went into such a deep and dark depression that I didn't function for a year and a half. A full year and a half, I was not a functioning person. I don't even remember my day to day during that time, except that every day was just a bout of personal survival. And when I discovered slime through my friend's daughter, I re-experienced joy. And I never knew I could have joy again. But playing with slime brought something back to me that I had fundamentally lost. So I started to use slime for my own personal healing. And I found that as I stretched and squeezed and smelled it and heard it and just got into the world of what that was, it
Yeah.
enabled me to have a form of escape. And I shared it with a friend because she was also going through a lot of tragedy and trauma. And she found not only the same thing I did, but a really beautiful thing happened when I brought her slime is that we got to see her neurodiverse daughter, who has a lot of physical limitations, enjoying slime equal to her neurotypical sister. And so for my friend, there was this eye opening moment that slime was an equalizer. And for me, it was an arbiter of joy. And I said, we have to bring this to people. It's going to touch so many people. And we didn't even think twice. We got a 12,000 square foot space in Soho and created what is now Sloo Moo Institute. And now we're 7 spaces. And by the end of next year, we'll be 9. And we have built this whole kind of playground for reconnecting with joy. And I told the story through word of mouth, through connecting with people like you again, but in now a different way because I can't pay them to come and experience it, but they wanna come because they want joy too. And, um, it's been a really incredible and challenging and amazing journey, but one that brought me back to myself.
It really does put you back in your body in a really valuable way, and I agree that it sort of transcends age. It transcends, like you said,
Already.
neurotypical ability. That really makes sense to me, like, why that would have appealed to you so much. I wanted to ask you about, do you recall that there was uh, the word shilling, 'member?
Yeah.
It was such a huge thing, and in retrospect, it seems silly. It's like, well, yeah, people need to make a living when they're creating content, but at the time, it was I was very stressed about that. I remember, uh, that it was a huge thing. How did you navigate that? Did it stress you out, or were you just like, "Oh, everyone's gonna figure this out eventually?"
It didn't stress me out because it's been happening actually since the beginning of time.
Yeah,
Since there
right,
was a brand in the universe, there
right.
was some form of influencer sharing it. If you're talking about pre television and newspaper and it was word of mouth and you were a medical product, you needed the town doctor to
Mhm,
validate. It's the
mhm.
same thing.
Yep,
It's the same thing as hiring Cindy Crawford for Pepsi. It's no, but it's actually more natural because that was like a clearly hired spot and this like very iconic Americana moment. Uh,
mhm.
but if you always stuck to the rule of you would never get behind something that isn't actually something you believe in, then you're fine. When somebody does something that in no means is representative of who they are on a human level, and that's when it doesn't ring true. So as long as it is actually true to you, and as long as you're not saying something you wouldn't say, doing something you wouldn't do, getting behind something you wouldn't normally use, wear, buy, then you're fine. The other difference, and this is something I always talk to my talent about, is that every moment doesn't have to be one that is paid for.
Of
Because there
course.
are gonna be brands or things that you do because you want to. The brand might not have a budget, and it might not come like, if it doesn't come with this massive scope of work and and is something that feels natural. I'm using as an example, like, maybe there's a brand who wants you to walk in their fashion show, and it would actually be natural to you. Naomi Campbell is walking in fashion shows today, a brand she believes in, for free because she believes in them. And so as long as you have a very healthy balance, your credibility won't be questioned. It's when you lose your healthy balance, it's
Right,
when
right.
you start doing things just for the money that you lose your
And it's
credit.
obvious to the people who are consuming the content. I mean, I think that the pushback was twofold. There's the element of, the blogosphere, which the early blogosphere was like messy and unfiltered, and and advertising branding kind of demands clarity and control in a way that is sort of pushes against what the blog was originally intended to be. But let's also not forget that this was a space dominated by young women, and I think that that was a I mean, of course, it was a tremendous part of the pushback because you're putting the money and the power directly in the hands of young women. And that redistribution of wealth was so, just people really pushed back against that women should be paid for telling their stories. I do think it was highly gendered, and I also think it was a pushback against, like,
The new
the origins of the blog.
Yeah, there was a lot of pushback against the new guard from the traditional.
Mhm.
And, when you think about just a brand, right? I'm just gonna think about a fashion show, and all of a sudden what happened was there were more people who suddenly had a reason or a purpose in being at that fashion show, which was to share with their audience. But the marketing budget or the budget to create the fashion show didn't change, but suddenly they needed bigger venues. So
Right.
there was like this whole other thing, that happened that really brands had to adjust to. Well, we don't have bigger budgets, but we have to accommodate something else now. How do you do that? And they had to get really creative. I think the kind of most amazing thing about that time was it forced everyone to be really creative, and it forced everyone to have to think a little differently. And if you think about what AI is doing today, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I remember going to covering Fashion Week, but I couldn't get into a lot of the big shows because I also wasn't a fashion blogger, but Timex, I was doing it with Timex, and so we came up with this whole idea where I would ride around in a car and do, like, street style stuff and essentially, like, stand outside the shows and, like, represent Timex and just, talk to people who are passing by, and I love that campaign because it was, like, a way to bring that accessibility. I was like, "Yeah, I can't get into Marc Jacobs,
Yeah.
but I'm here, and it's,
When
like,
I
really cool to
remember,
see Fashion Week in New York."
like, my career when I began in 1994, like, I couldn't get into fashion shows either, and I was it was a different system, and, first of all, I worked in the mailroom at Women's Wear Daily for a year, and that was, like, how you started a career if you were
Oh,
still
yeah.
in fashion at, like, whether you were an assistant at Condé or you were in the mailroom at Women's Wear, like, I'm not comparing myself to them, but, like, when I look at who started in certain mailrooms, it was like Calvin Klein started in the mailroom of Women's Wear Daily. Andre Leon Talley started in a mailroom at Women's Wear Daily. Like, I remember being excited and, like, feeling lucky that I got to be in this
Of
mailroom.
course. I mean, not to sound old, but I'm like, kids these days, they
No,
don't know what we did.
they
I
don't know.
I tried to start my career by, I tried to be a journalist during the collapse of the magazine industry and could not get a job to save my life, and then Condé Nast, I went to InStyle, and they offered me an unpaid internship, and I was like, 28 years old and married and had, like, bills, and I was like, "I can't do that," but that was how you had to gain entry at the time.
100%. And what I thought was awesome about this time of the rise of the blogosphere, and this is pre-Instagram, it was the at one point, it was pre-Twitter, right? It was the
Mhm.
beginning of creators, and I saw the ability to create a path for oneself in a new way. Because
Mhm.
my day, you were a year as an assistant, then you were this, then you were that. Like, I remember getting into a fashion show and being able to stand. I remember, like, kind of moving up the ranks before I actually got a good seat at a fashion show, and then
Yeah.
I remember feeling like a real emptiness when, like, I was sitting front row at fashion shows thinking, "This is, like, what I worked for, but it's not fulfilling my soul."
Yeah.
And there was something for me that while I got there, and it was what I would always aspire to, that when I got there, I felt really, really lonely. And that's when I decided to take a step back and take a different approach to what I was doing in my career. And I thought to myself, I started to realize that I was actually a better marketer than I was a writer. And I
Mhm.
loved constructing stories, or I loved getting behind the scenes and bringing it to life, which is, if you think about, like, creating experiential moments with brands, I am creating experiential moments now at Sloo Moo. I'm actually doing everything that my career set me up for.
I really thought it was interesting that you said at around 30, you stopped wanting to be in front of the camera. You stopped wanting to be the story. You wanted to help others tell the story. I really relate to how you felt at those fashion shows. I felt that same loneliness of, like, kind of like, what am I doing here? I'm sort of performing a role that I I I don't know if this is, like, who this is not who I am. I don't know these people. And the reason I'm doing this project is because I think that a lot of us back then were storytellers fundamentally, and with Instagram, it's all visual, it's all video, it's all, content. There's much less room for storytelling. And I think that became increasingly difficult for me to emotionally manage over time. And also there's just the reality of marketing is a youth-driven industry. And so where does that sort of leave you when you have built up a career selling yourself, like, you are the product, but then your product changes, or maybe it goes back to what it always was in the beginning.
Oh my god, my dad, I'm in my parents' house, and my dad just walked in.
Hi, Dad.
Dad,
Hi.
do you wanna interrupt and say hello to the podcast?
Hi, podcast.
Hi, Dad.
They don't look like pods. They look like real people.
I love him.
I said to my family, I'm going outside at 11 to do a podcast. Don't come outside. Don't interrupt me. Don't call me.
Dads don't listen. My father, I was just on the phone with like an important client at his house.
Who you on the phone with?
What do you want for dinner? So how do you feel about that, that sort of how age or theoretically the gaining of some kind of wisdom, but also sort of the aging out of being influential in like that very specific way? It sounds like you went on sort of a similar journey to that.
I did. I think it's different for everyone, and there's nothing wrong of never tiring of it because it is exciting and creative and
It's so exciting.
inspiring, and it's culture. And I still love the culture of all of those things. I just like it from the seat I'm in now, just
Mhm.
kind of watching it versus like having to be in it.
Yes.
For me, what I felt was that I was really succumbing to judging myself in such a superficial way, and the comparison of our designers sending you clothes to wear to their shows. And then I thought, like, why do I have to run and change before every single show to like fill? I get it. It's all marketing. For me, it wasn't fulfilling me. I remember hearing somebody say, being able to get the best table in a restaurant or even get into the restaurant does not a soul make. And that was how I was feeling. I
Yeah.
was feeling like a piece of me wasn't fulfilled. And I wanted to still touch that world because it really does inspire me, but I didn't want to be in the crux of it in the way that I was. And I
Mhm.
thought like coming at it in a different way and building in a different way because I love building things. I love building
Mhm.
people. I love building brands. I love building stories. I love setting like the construct for things. I love strategy work. I love thinking of what's going to move culture. And I just thought I could do it from a different angle. At around 30 was I just wanted a different lifestyle, right? I got to do it in incredible ways. I got to see insane things in my 20s. And at 30 I just wanted something different. And now I am in my 50s.
You're in your 50s now.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess so.
Right? It
Well, I'm
makes sense.
44. It happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was thinking about I used to, have photographers and like run around the city and like change in doorways and,
It's
do
amazing and
looks in the
fun.
meatpacking district. I would
Yeah.
die if I had to do that now. If
Yeah.
someone was like, go outside and pose on your street, I would die. I don't know like where that person went, but
Dude,
no thanks.
that was a phase. Like it's so fascinating
It is.
to have had that moment.
It truly is, and I think there's also, the part of it with, like, having kids and stuff. Can you imagine? I'm, like, on the beach, like,
Yeah,
they would just I think they would never talk to me again.
definitely wouldn't.
It's very funny, though, that this generation, Gen Alpha, they just have a really different take on it. They just get it in a way that
Born
well,
with
of
it.
course, they grew up with it, but they even get, like, the pushback and stuff. Like, I remember being very, very concerned about, negative things being written about me on the internet. And I was like, one day my kids will see them and, oh God, they'll think these things about me. And they literally are like, Mom, like, they're trolls. Who cares? Do you think there is a psychological toll to sort of this self as product? Or do you think, I mean, everybody navigates it differently, obviously, but I mean, it's the same with actors, same with models, anyone who sort of they are the product. It's a really interesting psychology that comes from that, and I always knew that I was going to age out of being willing/able to perform like that, and sort of put in steps to, like, make sure that I had a career. But where have you seen that sort of early wave of people? Where did they go?
I mean, they there's many of them are still in it in a
I
different way,
know. Yeah.
but many of them have also created their own brands that doesn't necessarily have to star their face, but stars their brains.
Yeah.
Many of them have brands that still star their face. I think it's different for everyone. Everyone's on their own individual journey. And I do think that the most important thing in the universe for anybody who is self as product or who gains a lot of recognition, a lot of, for lack of a better word, power, a lot of money, is to just remember who you are at your core and to never lose sight of what's important. Because knock on wood, something can happen, right? I was at an event recently and there was a woman who was speaking named Amy Purdy. And if you don't know who she is, please go down a Google hole. She's a double amputee.
Writing it down. Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
do know. I have
Olympic
heard of her.
medalist who was also on Dancing with the Stars. And she was one of the most magnificent speakers I've ever heard. And she really represents triumph and tragedy. She really represents finding creativity in your soul to thrive with unbelievable adversity. And it was one of the most empowering stories I've ever heard. And that is the definition of sort of never really losing yourself. I mean,
Mhm.
I like going through the losses that I went through really shifted my soul and really shifted the way that I approach everything in life now and what I deem important and how I want to uphold myself and what I value. And that doesn't mean I don't still love a handbag. Um, because I do, but for me, when I look at my niece and nephew, and I see how taken they are in social with taking photos of themselves, Snapchatting, all the things. I want them to always remember the value of their own self-love and that it doesn't have to come from a like and that it actually just comes from like a very deep place that has nothing to do with what you look like. And
Mhm.
I think of all the decisions I make in my career or in any way and think, what will the message be for them?
Yeah. And that is something that you helped create, was a space that young women in particular could walk into, and it really wasn't about likes in the back then. It was people who were creating authentic spaces to express themselves, just this wide variety of different ways, and you were able to harness that and give them a platform to make it not just a fun thing they did on a Friday night, but make a living out of it. This space has opened up so much, and that has been actually, we complain about all the kids are Snapchatting and they're all obsessed, but look at what they're seeing online. They're seeing creators who are like Amy Purdy. They're seeing creators who just bring a wide breadth of experiences to the public space in a way that I just don't know ever existed. It didn't.
It didn't.
It didn't. Is there anything that you wanna leave me with? Anything that you think people really don't understand about, the influencer economy or where it came from, that you want to
Everybody
share?
understands we talked about where it came from. I don't know if people really got that. They just, oh, influencer, like as if it was always there.
It was not there. It wasn't even a word.
I had this memory in like the mid 90s and being at Women's Wear Daily and looking at photos of like all the socialites and they were the influencers.
Tinsley Mortimer.
I mean, no, before
Oh,
Tinsley.
before that.
Before Tinsley. I remember when she was a PR girl. Um, yeah. And I remember when she left her job. Like I was there for so much cultural change. But I remember looking at these like socialites and having the same feeling I had when I grew up in the 80s and I looked at supermodels and thought like it was hard, right? Like I was like, I'm never gonna look like these women. And these were the ideals. And first of all, I'm 4'11" and a half. So it's clear I'm never going to look like a supermodel. Like, it's
Mhm.
not in the cards for me. And I remember feeling inferior. And then I remember feeling like this little bit of inferiority seeing these socialites because I'm not a perfect blonde with a, from a steel magnate family. Like,
Right, yeah.
and I remember thinking, who's it going to be in 10, 15 years? It can't be this because this is so not real. Nobody can be this. And then when I saw the creators coming up, it was literally like, I was like, this is who it's going to be. Like, I could help create this.
It blows my mind. What we have lived through, and you preceded me by a solid 10 years, has been so earth shattering in a way that, and it feeds into virtually every industry. And I just truly think that there is tremendous value in looking at where it came from and the people who were there at the beginning and what they were trying to do, because elements of that definitely still echo today. And a lot of it, of course, has changed dramatically. But yeah, it's a real been a real sea change. And I think it's something that you were one of the people shepherding it in. Well, I thank you so much, Karen, and everyone should please check out Sloo Moo Institute. It is a magical place, and I love you very much, and
I
thank
love
you
you.
for
I love
my
you.
job and life.
Oh, mwah.